South Africa's education system is also in the spotlight at the ANC policy conference. In discussion papers issued ahead of the deliberations, the party acknowledges that the education system since 1994 does not foster a culture of creativity and has failed to encourage the country's youth to pursue entrepreneurship. Education expert Xolani Majola joins us now to unpack some of these matters. Thank you very much for availing yourself this morning. So under the theme of education, there are a number of questions that delegates will then go into, and let's just take this as questions that are sent as a survey to everyday South Africans, you and I. One of the questions being, what progress has been made in the education, health, science, technology and innovation sectors in your community and province since the 2017 Nasrec Johannesburg 54th ANC National Conference? For the purpose of this conversation, let's focus on education in terms of what progress has been made.
Thank you and good morning. Progress has been made, although at a very marginal level, if I may point that out. I'm looking at, for instance, the offering of basic education to everyone in the country, which was never the case before, or even the quality of it before was not really up to scratch. So we will commend the ANC government for actually making attempts in trying to deal with that. And secondly, for me, would be the issue of promoting access to, yes, basic education, and to tertiary education, right? Because as we all know, it was very difficult for black students in the past to gain access to the world of academia. And so the ANC government can also be credited with making that a possibility. And also for them trying to look at basic infrastructure that made it possible for these educational activities to then happen, whether at school level, whether at tertiary level. And also making tertiary accessible through their financial aid, which they gave to poor students to access university. And as fast comes to mind when it comes to that. And so you have a government that has got potential to do more, but at the moment, simply because of its own internal incapacities, then the ANC hasn't been able to optimize on using policy to actually drive change at a societal level. That, for me, I think has been the biggest challenge for them, and it remains the biggest challenge for them. And as far as I'm concerned, one of the things that I hope they'll be able to look at beyond just education is how they actually implement policy. Who they charge with that responsibility, because year in, year out, we seem to be having similar implementation challenges, which points to one thing, that in my view, it depends on who you put in place of your policy implementation. It depends on their capacity. It depends on their bureaucratic capabilities. And at the moment, it would seem that with catered deployment, ideology in place, that has limits, because then whoever you put there, the hope is that they should be capable people, you know. But if you put in people who are only there for political reasons, who are chosen not on merit but purely on political loyalty, then the problem begins right there, because then that person will be unable to use their own capacity to then transform organizational policies into state implementation. That, for me, has been the biggest challenge, because as things stand at the moment, the ANC's own internal leadership is problematic, and that has created major challenges within the education sector.
Another question that will be put to delegates is question 3. Have you found that the ANC policies in these sectors support efficient and speedy delivery of services? I get I guess rather this one in particular, taking a look at schools in rural areas where you find that some children still in 2022 have to walk some distances. There's no water on school grounds. And you know, it's a rather worrying situation that this year, 2022, when we're talking about the fourth industrial revolution, there are still some kids who still have to play catch-up.
Agreed, completely agreed. And it's unfair to those children, because what the ANC is doing right now when they talk about the fourth industrial revolution, they are putting the cart before the horse, because they haven't been able to deal with basic infrastructural challenges that some of these schools have. And for now, to ask for these children who find themselves in these dire circumstances is putting them under undue pressure. It is unfair that these students are now expected to operate at the highest level possible when they haven't got the basics. So you're asking them to solve mathematical problems of a higher nature when they haven't been able to resolve basic computation. And that, for me, again, it points to an issue. I have a theory on this that says cadre deployment could just be the reason why we experience these problems, because then you have people there who only can operate from a party political ideology. They haven't got the skills that will allow them to actually go into the public sector and become public implementers of public policies. That, for me, remains the biggest challenge. So, yeah, I agree with you. In 2022, we shouldn't be talking about basic infrastructure. We shouldn't be talking about people basically battling at a basic level. We shouldn't. There were reports that came that looked at literacy. I think it was in 2016, the PELS report that said 80% of grade 4 learners in South Africa couldn't read for meaning. That, again, is a serious indictment on implementation of government policy, because that shouldn't have happened. By then, children should, at a basic level, be able to read and write and count.
Xolani Majola is an education expert. Unfortunately, that's all we can afford in terms of time. Thank you very much for availing yourself this morning.